Anglesey, Ynys Mon, is an island on the northwest coast of Wales, an area rich in prehistoric monuments. We visit windswept Iron Age ruins as well as medieval chapels, but begin with the world's first suspension bridge. A road trip to Anglesey. It was a sunny yet windy day. After driving through Eryri, which is the new name for Snowdonia, we crossed over to Anglesey via the Menai Suspension Bridge. Anglesey is rich in ancient and not so ancient history. Over the next day, we shall be visiting Iron Age villages, medieval chapels and 19th century architectural innovations. Join us as we reveal interesting and mysterious landscape features. The Menai Suspension Bridge. The Menai Suspension Bridge is known in Welsh as Pont y Borth or Pont Grogeborth. It spans the Menai Strait between the island of Anglesey and mainland Wales. Although a Grade 1 listed structure, it is still busy today with traffic. The Menai Strait was caused by glacial erosion during the Pleistocene, which ended 11,700 years ago when ice sheets moving across Anglesey and Gwynedd scoured the bedrock. Later, the sea flooded the deepest channels, forming the strait. Boats crossing the Menai Strait had to navigate 4 daily tides that flow in both directions through the strait. Ferries made hazardous crossings, but many capsized or ran aground, and drowning was a real threat. Cows destined for market as far away as London were also once made to swim across the Menai Straits, and many drowned, causing great loss of income. In 1282, Edward I built a bridge across the strait using boats, and in 1594, Queen Elizabeth I leased a ferry to John Williams to cross the strait whilst a bridge was being built. The lack of a bridge caused passengers and goods to rely on ferries in all weathers, and when a strong gale in 1785 sunk a boat carrying 55 at the southern end of the Menai Strait, only one person survived. In 1800, when Ireland joined the United Kingdom through the Act of Union, the number of travellers increased from London through Holyhead to Dublin. The route became an important roadway, representing a physical link between Parliament and Ireland, but it was a dangerous journey. In 1815, Thomas Telford, a civil engineer, completed a survey of the London to Holyhead route, citing the best options. This was to build a bridge over the Menai Strait, linking points near Bangor on the mainland to the village of Porthwethy, now Menai Bridge, on Anglesey. Telford Suspension Bridge would span fast-flowing waters and be flanked by tall banks, allowing sailing ships to pass underneath. Parliament accepted his plan for the bridge and New Holyhead Road, leading to the principal port for ferries to Dublin, which was submitted in 1818. In 1819, Telford began his groundbreaking project. Telford designed the Menai Suspension Bridge with limestone towers on either side of the strait, and the main stonework was completed in 1824. In 1825, the first chain was lifted into position. The Menai Bridge opened to traffic for the first time on the 30th of January 1826. It was safer and dramatically reduced the 36-hour journey time from London to Holyhead by 9 hours to just 27 hours. This triumph of civil engineering was the biggest suspension bridge in the world at the time. However, the roadway was only 24 feet or 7.3 metres wide, proving to be highly unstable in the wind. So the deck of the Menai Bridge was strengthened in 1840, and in 1893 the entire wooden surface was replaced with a steel deck designed by Sir Benjamin Baker. Over the following decades, the bridge has been adjusted. The increasing weight of freight passing over meant that in 1938 the original wrought iron chains were replaced, and at the same time a new deck and footpaths were constructed either side of the bridge. In 1999, major repair works strengthened the structure, and in 2022 it was closed again for essential maintenance. A representation of the Menai Bridge inside a border of rails and stanchions is featured on the reverse of the British £1 coin minted in 2005. and Operation Menai Bridge is the code name for plans related to the death of King Charles III. In today's episode, we take a look at the Swellies and at the medieval St. Tysilio's church. The Swellies. The Swellies, or in Welsh, Llwyfrceris, is the most treacherous section of the Menai Strait between the Britannia Bridge and the Menai Bridge, where rocky whirlpools and dangerous tide surges typify the coast surrounding Anglesey. Two small islands in the Swellies are Church Island, or Ynys Tysilio, and Ynys Goch, meaning Red Weir Island or White Bait Island. A medieval document says that in that arm of the sea between Mon Island, which is Anglesey, and North Wales, is a swallow that draws ships that sail and swallows them in, as do Scylla and Carabodus. Therefore we do not sail by this swally, but slyly at the full sea. St. Tysilio's Church on the Menai Bridge. Church Island sits close to the Menai Suspension Bridge. St. Tysilio's Church and its adjoining cemetery cover this 2.7-acre island surrounded by stunning scenery. Church Island is connected to Anglesey by a causeway with the sea on both sides at high tide. From the causeway, one passes through the cemetery gate onto the rocky island, greeted by a majestic yew with gravestones spreading up the hill behind. At the top of the hill, the Cwyfan commemorates lives lost at war, and there is a view of the Britannia Bridge and the surrounding area. St. Tysilio Church is a small medieval building on Church Island, marking the site of a religious cell established by St. Tysilio. Born the son of the King of Powys, Tysilio fled his father's court to follow the religious life. He founded the hermitage on Church Island in the Menai Strait around 630 AD, and after 7 years he left to become Abbot of Myford, Powys, where his religious training had begun. The present church, believed to replace the original building, was built during the 15th century. Some say Tysilio may have also been called St. Suliac, the saint that set up a religious centre in Brittany. Steeped in history, the interior of St. Tysilio's church is very small and quaint, with an ancient octagonal baptismal font, reputedly dating from the 14th century. Its roof, with its curved timbers rising from the ground to the upper part of the roof, is a rare example of construction with cruck trusses. In the 1850s, St. Tysilio was supplanted by the new St. Mary's, a church more convenient for the town with its growing population. But St. Tysilio was still used occasionally, and in August 1892, a visiting curate preached at the church door to a large congregation that spilt out into the churchyard. A reproduction of the original 15th century window at the east end of the church was installed during extensive restorations during the 1890s, when the original wooden trusses were also preserved. The main rectangular door is unusual, having been fitted with a massive oak frame with a round arched top. A farm occupied most of Church Island until August 1918, when its lease expired. The Bishop of Bangor then consecrated the whole island for burials. The Cwyfan was installed on top of the hill as a memorial to the local people who died in the First World War. The surrounding cemetery contains graves of various ages, including men who died while constructing the Britannia Bridge. A small plaque near the entrance of the churchyard also commemorates those who died during the construction of the Menai Suspension Bridge. Several of the graves around the church have burials related to those lost or involved in war. Lastly, a mention of John Evans, buried in 1888, commemorated as Abarth Kokos. He was a cockle seller, famous in his hometown of Menai for his unintentionally inane poetry, which he printed and sold in 1-penny leaflets. Epitomising a man who believed in his own talent, the local people proclaimed him the princely arch cocklebard, supplying him with regalia, including a colourfully beaded hat that he wore at cultural events. His neighbours also appear to have been instrumental in John Evans's decision to ask for Queen Victoria's hand in marriage. Typical of his work is this tribute to Wales' highest mountains. Snowdonia is a very large mountain, higher at the top than it is at the bottom. Gwythalod. Our first day we visited an area of heather and gorse west of Holyhead on Anglesey, marked Gwythalod on the map. This Welsh name means Irishmen's huts, but only the stone foundations survive today. It was at the base of Holyhead Mountain that we met the mayor of Anglesey and discovered the hut circles. The site's position high above the coast would have allowed a clear view of ships approaching from the Irish Sea. The Irish occupied parts of Anglesey after the Romans, but these huts date before this era. The hidden foundations of hut circles on Anglesey and North Wales rarely survive, but Gwythalod, a site up to 8 hectares scattered across the slopes of Holyhead Mountain, are well maintained. The first survey in 1865 discovered evidence for over 50 huts, yet by the 1930s only 20 survived. Originally believed to be Roman from coins discovered at the site, the huts have been recently dated to the Iron Age, about 500 BC, and they were probably used for agricultural purposes in the 6th century. Finds at the site include flint arrowheads, part of a stone axe, and Neolithic or early Bronze Age pottery sherds. Most of the buildings interpreted as houses measure between 6 to 10 metres across. These huts had thick stone walls supporting rafters for a tall conical roof formed with wooden poles, and the larger buildings incorporated interior wooden posts supporting the upper ends of the poles. The whole structure would have been covered with turf or thatch, reminiscent of the roundhouses reconstructed at Flag Fen. Some had part subterranean sheds for storage and workshops or cattle shelters. The entrance to one hut is a long curved passage, possibly to easily herd animals or for defensive purposes. At Gwythalod, the hut buildings vary and were modified throughout history. Simple yet substantial huts sit beside more complex buildings, some incorporating enclosed walled areas and some larger oval-shaped buildings featuring internal dividing walls. Many huts featured a hearth, sometimes with a stone platform or other stone furniture, including ledges and basins, stone tools, spindles and whetstones. Querns for grinding grain were discovered, as well as metal slag associated with metalworking. 1980s excavations of 2 of the huts revealed Mesolithic flint tools and charcoal in a hearth that dated to the late Neolithic, indicating a very long occupation. The larger hut, 25 metres in diameter, predated 200 BC, and this date was calculated from a pile of limpet shells from this time, and their position was discovered on top of a stone wall. The wall of this hut was later extended to enclose a yard. Richer soil near to the stone wall appears to have once been a raised vegetable bed, while plough marks in the field below showed evidence for growing crops like wheat, barley and oats. It is thought that only 1 or 2 farmsteads would ever have been in use at one time during this period, spanning 1,000 years. Much of the settlement faces towards the southwestern end of the terrace, while the farmstead building is further to the northeast. Another similar hut circle settlement appears to have existed at Bryn Eryri Farm in Llansadwyn. Although nothing remains, excavation plans have been used to create a reconstruction of an Iron Age village at St Fagan's Open Air Museum in South Wales. Similar buildings have been reconstructed near Anglesey's Llyn windmill. The Cotire Gwythalod hut circles are opposite the car park on the road leading to South Stack, close to the RSPB centre. The nearest town is Holyhead. The second flight from a windy, rocky beach couldn't get too close to St Cwyfan's Church or the little church in the sea in Llangadwr, Anglesey, Wales. St Cwyfan's Church is dedicated to St Kevin, who founded a monastery in County Wicklow, Ireland. It originally stood at the end of a peninsula between two bays, but coastal erosion cut off the peninsula and turned Cwyfan, where the church stands, into a small tidal island. Nowadays, a causeway to the island allows access to the church. The medieval church dates from the 12th century, being reconstructed in the 14th century and renovated in the 19th century when erosion caused some of the graveyard to fall into the sea. At this time, a new building was used instead, further inland at Llangafon. St Cwyfan's fell into disrepair until 1893, when a local architect, Howard Hughes, constructed a seawall around the Cwyfan and restored the building. It is a Grade 2 listed building, and the graveyard still features several illegible flat grave markers dating back to the 1700s. In 1766, an English priest was appointed. The elderly Dr. Thomas Bowles had about 500 parishioners, but only 5 could understand English. In January 1773, the congregation protested to an ecclesiastical court, and subsequently only Welsh-speaking priests were sent to primarily Welsh-speaking parishes. A short walk at low tide across the beach leads to the rocky causeway and steps, although it is prudent to take account of the tide times. The scenery around Cwyfan really sets the tone and is great for photography. In this episode, we cross over to the east side of Anglesey to visit the Ynys Mon Lligwy burial chamber and the Romano-British settlement. Ynys Mon Lligwy is near two other interesting sites: Lligwy Burial Chamber, a prehistoric cromlech across the road, and a ruined medieval chapel. The three sites are all within a short walking distance of each other. Lligwy Burial Chamber is on the narrow road towards Molf. This cromlech dates back to the end of the 3rd millennium BC, 4,500 years ago. Originally covered with a mound of earth, access to the central chamber was through a small passage. Excavations in 1908 uncovered the remains of 15 to 30 people, along with pieces of beaker and grooved pottery ware from the end of the Neolithic period. The colossal capstone of 25 tons is supported by 8 upright stones, only 3 of which are actually holding it up. These uprights are 2 meters tall, although being submerged in the soil, they seem shorter. Lligwy settlement and chapel. The last place we visited that day had huge stone foundations and building footings, and a ruined chapel we visited on the way back to the car. Lligwy is an ancient stone-built settlement with local limestone foundations, once containing 2 residential round huts and several rectangular barns and workshop buildings. 9 huts within an enclosure spanning about half an acre may have been a farmstead based on the design of a Roman villa. Sturdy walls contained livestock, and a protective wall encircled the whole settlement. This outer wall was constructed of 2 rows of large limestone blocks filled in with rubble, 5 metres thick in places. The wall is almost intact, although much reduced in height. The Welsh word for wall is dyn, hence the name Lligwy. Some of the rectangular huts shared their outer walls with this main wall, and the entrance appears to have been on the northeast side. Lligwy was used at the end of the Roman occupation of Britain during the Romano-British period, as along with glass and a small silver ingot, Roman coins and pottery were discovered from the 3rd and 4th centuries AD. Excavations, though, do suggest earlier structures in use at this site long before that. During Roman times, Anglesey was called Mona. The late Britons lived in roundhouses but adopted a Roman lifestyle. Raiding increased as Roman occupation declined, and this could be when the defensive wall was built around the site. Excavation also revealed a glass jug and animal bones, some fashioned into tools and one into a musical instrument. 6 foundry hearths were found in 2 of the rectangular buildings, and the remains of slag piles indicated smelting, a process for iron manufacturing. Many potsherds were discovered that had been repaired with iron clamps. Roman iron production strengthened Roman power, and the coal used at this site possibly came from Flintshire, as local coal would not be discovered for another 1,000 years. Despite the Roman finds, traces of oak charcoal found in 2 hearths suggest a small Iron Age farming community probably existed there at one time. Lengths of occupation are unclear, and it is unknown why and when the site was abandoned. Its vast age witnessed Druids, the invading Romans, and the dawn of the Christian era. The present hill, now overgrown with sycamore and ash, hides this site from view. Nearby lies a ruined chapel situated high up, overlooking Lligwy and Dillash Bay. Capel Lligwy. The light was fading by the time we got to the hauntingly Gothic ruined chapel on the hill, with an epic view of the northwest Wales landscape and coastline. Hen Capel Lligwy chapel dates to the 12th century, probably replacing an existing timber Celtic church. This followed a turbulent period of Viking raids and attempted Norman conquest, when many wooden structures on Anglesey and in northwest Wales were replaced with stone, and churches were first built with stone. It is not known who the church was dedicated to, but as the only stone building in the area, it would have been a focal point, despite its apparent solitude. It was possibly once linked to Dyn Lligwy, but no relationship between them has yet been found. The church was repaired and refurbished in the 14th century, and a small chapel and crypt were added in the early 16th century. It remained in use for over 600 years, surviving Henry VIII's dissolution of 1547. It has even been suggested that because the Tudors originated from Anglesey, they may have protected this chapel. Hen Capel Lligwy fell into dereliction in the early 18th century, used until then as a private chapel for a venerable mansion. the long-gone Place Lligwy, or Lligwy Hall, home of the Pierce Lloyd family. Today, the walls still remain, with some traces of internal render, but there is no roof. It retains its essential structure with its gable-end bellcote at the west end. Hen Capel Lligwy was built from rubble masonry. The building style changes about 5 feet up the walls, showing where 14th century rebuilding started, as smaller stones were inserted into spaces between the larger blocks. The south doorway, headed by a plain arch, dates from the 12th century original construction. There is no structural division between the nave and the chancel, neither are there any window openings on the north side. But there is a blocked opening to the east about 5 feet wide and the remains of a window on the south wall of the south chapel. A small chapel with a crypt underneath was added in the 16th century by the Pierce Lloyd family for their own family members, and the vault, about 27 square feet, is reached by stone steps from inside the south chapel. Limestone slabs form the roof of the vault and the floor of the chapel above. There's a stone in the nave about 2 square feet with a hole at the top, which once might have been used as the churchyard cross. Part of the churchyard wall still remains, showing that it was originally within a main enclosure typical for early churches. And on a clear day, it is said, the Isle of Man can be seen across the sea. Capel Lligwy is a Grade II listed building, cared for by Cadw. Various writers have offered opinion on the ruined chapel. The 19th century antiquarian Angarad Cloyd described the architecture to be of the rudest kind, which bears testimony to its great antiquity. She recounted that the vault was discovered when a fox was dug out of the ruins. Human skeletons were found, crumbling to dust when exposed to the air. She added that a large mass of human bones, several feet deep, were found later when the vault was explored. It appears to have remained a chapel of ease rather than becoming a parish church. Its purpose to perform simple, regular religious services, marriages and christenings, but rarely burials. In 1999, a Welsh band of musicians called the Serpents used the vault for recording purposes. The collective included members of Echo and the Bunnymen, Super Furry Animals and Ectogra, and they produced an album called You Have Been Poisoned by the Serpents. The parish church of St Llanolgo is less than a mile away, while just to the north is Dullas Beach and to the south is Molvra, a small fishing village rich in maritime history. Anglesey is an amazing place. We really enjoyed our brief but memorable visit, but our time was up. There is so much to see on Anglesey. Our schedule was tight and we could only dip a toe into the water on this occasion, but we shall visit again for another trip soon. Please like, subscribe, click the bell icon. It will help us bring you more illuminating content.